back, guys, to another episode of the Footy GameDay SquadShow. I'm your host, as always, Cal. Joining me today, I've got Kerm and Tom. Guys, how are we?
Good. We've just come off the Demons podcast, and now we have to go all the way back down to North Melbourne. So, yeah, bit of a humbling experience this will be.
Yeah, mate, and I've been good as well. I've had the same shirt on for the past week. You know, it's been a week since we recorded, so yeah, a bit stinky here, but mate, we'll get through this.
Yeah, not a fun one, but we have to do it for all you North fans out there, wherever you are. We are here because of Game Day Squad, though. We are launching on the 28th, which is Monday. We're sitting here on Wednesday afternoon, so we are super excited to get our platform out to everyone in the start of that for the fantasy season, and this is what we're here for. So, guys, let's dive straight into North Melbourne. So join in the chorus. All right, guys, having a look at the North year, we can see 4 wins, 13 losses, and a draw has them smack bottom of the ladder. Going to try and find a highlight, though. For me, it was picking up Jason Horne-Francis, the number 1 pick. Yes. If I'm the North fan, that's the only thing I'm super excited about. You've now got that guy that you can point to and say, he's the guy we're going to build around. He's our messiah. I'd be super, super happy to have him in my club. I'm sure North fans are. It's just, you know, what they can put around him, and hopefully they don't ruin him going forward. But low light, losing the first 4 games of the season by an average of 70 points, including a 20 goal thrashing on Good Friday, which I have here, wasn't ideal. So you've summed that up perfectly, Kerm. Yeah, and then it was a bad start to the year, and they could just never get rolling. But yeah, I don't really want to talk about them too much. I reckon get straight onto their star of the year. Kerm, who'd you have?
Yeah, start of the year. Let's talk about some good stuff. And this guy will be joining Jason Horne-Francis in the midfield this year, as Kangaroos fans have done for the last 50 years. Always look ahead. But Jai Simkin, he was absolutely awesome. A really big bright spot for the Kangaroos last year. 14 kicks, 12 handballs, 4.3 marks, and really took that midfield position that he really took by the horns and made it his own. So yeah, Jai Simkin was really good. We're expecting to be good in 2022 as well. A lot of CBAs coming his way. I really like this guy, Jai Simkin.
And for me, it was a tough decision between Simkin and Aaron Hall, and I've stuck with Aaron Hall here. For me personally, he was their star of the year, and fantasy production also agrees with that, topping the team for the season, as you can see in front of you right now. He finished ahead of second by 10 points per game on average, which is quite significant when you're looking at fantasy production and his score. Not only is he a defender, but he led the team in disposals out of the back line, which sort of makes sense because, as we mentioned, some of those score lines earlier on in the year, the ball was down there a whole lot. That might be a little bit of an understatement, but you know where I'm sort of getting at. Aaron Hall was their best player for me personally, and without him, things could have been a lot worse.
Quickly, 21 kicks a game.
Doesn't mind a kick. Yeah.
Does not mind a kick.
Yeah, and you were saying the ball coming back there a lot. I reckon it was going over their head a lot as well. Straight through the big sticks. I had his other running mate, the other 31-year-old defender. I went with Siebel. So Similar sort of player to Hall, but yeah, he's obviously the captain there. He was, 120 was his average, second highest defender. You spoke in the last episode, Tom, about stacking a couple of players together, and I think you pair Hall and Siebel. You know, fantasy coaches that had them together last year would have been super, super happy. And there are a couple of North players that I wouldn't actually mind packing, because we'll get to them whether they're going to be in our team for this year. But yeah, for me, a really, really good year fantasy-wise. Obviously, must be tough sort of being there when the team's not doing well and having to captain there. So yeah, hats off to him, because that mustn't be an easy job. What about on the other side, though? This is where the options open up a little bit more. Your disappointment of the year. Who'd you go with, Cam?
Plenty to choose from here. And I went with Jared Pollock, who's been paid... They got him from Port for $1 squillion, paying him a lot of money a year, and he's just not performing. He's lost the wing role that he had. He was playing a lot more down back. He's still going to be a mid for us coming into the 2022 season, but 9 kicks, 3 handballs a game, that's a long way from where he was with the power, averaging, mid-20s, early 20s for years, impacting his game by foot, breaking the lines, getting a lot of yardage, the American podcast coming back.
Now. Yeah.
Getting a lot of meters by foot.
Guys, it's been 6 weeks, guys. Come on, though.
I miss it. No, he's a long way from where he was at the power, and I don't think we're going to see the same Jared Pollock again for as much money as he's getting.
And for me, I've gone something a little bit different here. I've gone the Roos forward line. And the numbers you're seeing in front of you right now are essentially the averages from the forwards in this season and the goal kickers. And as you can see there, nothing too impressive. It's a 1.5 average for goals between all of the forwards on the team. I didn't even include the two lower end ones. So this is honestly a little bit higher than it should be. I just included the main goal kickers for the team. And, they just struggled to kick goals. Any consistency from in front, consistency with their players in front of goals as well. No one cracked the 2-goal average per game over the whole season. We got one that was pretty close at 1.9, but then after that, there's a pretty big drop-off. So, very disappointing year for the Roos forwards, but they didn't have it down there a whole lot inside their 50, so that probably explains a couple of things there as well.
Yeah, it's tough to score goals when the midfield's not doing their job. But yeah, I was wondering what you're doing with that slide. I saw that and I was like, what is that? But no, you've explained that quite well. My disappointment of the year, flops a bit hard for this one, so I'll go disappointment. It's Will Phillips. So this, and again, tough giving it to a guy who's only 18, but he was the number 3 pick from last year's draft. Remember, he was affected by that COVID, sort of under 18 competition where he didn't actually play a competitive game before he got to, in that sort of draft year. But I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from him. Being a number 3 pick, there was never a time where I went and saw, with my own eyes in an AFL game where I went, right, that guy, that's why he was a number 3 pick. Wasn't after the consistency, I was just after the flash, and I didn't get to see it. So that would have been a bit disappointing. Hopefully he makes me look silly by throwing him in here in flop of the year or disappointment of the year and comes back and has a really, really good year, because I'm all for the North. I give him a lot of stick in a lot of podcasts, but, tough club with, a lot of things, the financial stuff. They don't have the same money as the other clubs, and you like to see someone like them and St Kilda do well, and just hopefully you can help turn it around. Report card. I think this is going to be a fun one. How did we all see North Melbourne play out?
So it's just started raining in Cairns, so if you can hear that, I do apologise. But I gave them a D+, and I could have been a lot harsher, given they finished bottom of the ladder, but there were some bright spots that came through in the midfield that I really liked, the likes of LDU, Jason Horne-Francis now going forward. He wasn't there last year, but he still does excite me. And Phillips, they have a lot of young players that haven't had the opportunity yet, and I just want to give them a chance. I don't want to throw them all in the bin just yet. So obviously finishing last isn't fantastic. They did perform for what I think their list is, so hence the D+.
And I've gone to D- here. There isn't too much to explain. I think all the fans in North Melbourne's front office know how bad of a year it was, and they're trying to put this behind them and move on to the next season.
Yeah, fair enough. I went with a C-. I was a little bit more lenient than you guys. I think their expectations, they were meant to be last on the table. So I wasn't expecting much from them. It was their fighting out with the Crows, and I think they did bounce back and have a good couple of wins. So in terms of where I was expecting them, I don't want to give it much higher than a C-, but I think a fail would have been tough because, they did get Horne-Francis. So for me, that maybe tips it over the edge. But when you put our cumulative scores together, that gives them a D+, I've just calculated there. So we have failed them for the year, guys. I blame that on you. See, North fans, I told you, it's not me that's hating on you. But you can see them. That's got them on the same level with your Suns, your Blues, and your Hawks. So, disappointing year for the North. But, we'll wrap it up there and see how they're looking ahead for next season. So join in the chorus. Alrighty, guys, looking ahead to this season, which, of course, we are super excited for because Game Day Squad launches in just under a week. We want to start building out our teams for the season, which starts in a few weeks' time. So having a look at what I've done up there, the mountain, the Premiership Mountain, I think you can see pretty good story for the North. They've sort of, pretty easy to read, I should say. They've come down the mountain. They've bottomed out, but I've now got them coming back up the mountain. They've got Horne-Francis. They've got a player they can build around. Hopefully, we're saying the number 3 pick from last year or a couple of years ago starts to turn good. And I still have them at 16th. I don't think they're going to be getting much higher than, say 12th, kind of, where it's, I think that's the top I put for the ceiling I put for Hawthorn as well. But where do you guys see the year playing out for North?
100% agree. Anything but an uptrend is, I think, unrealistic because there are so many young players coming through. We've spoken about a couple already, and we will speak about more going forward in the podcast. But this team, regardless of what you think, I think is exciting. And I know that's hard to say for a team that we're predicting to finish 16th, but with so much young talent running through the midfield, and you've got Cameron Zurhaar up front, who I think has the potential to be one of the more damaging forwards in the league this season. I think it's exciting. The prediction is still fair for me, but they definitely are on the uptrend.
And guys, when you're at rock bottom, the only way is up. So I completely agree. They were the wooden spooners from the year before. We've spoken, there are plenty of different factors that sort of played out into it, but it just wasn't their year. You know, they got off on the wrong foot, lost a couple of players throughout the season as well. It is only up from here. We've mentioned some of the young talent they have. If they can really start clicking and working together, you know, that things might start turning around sooner than later for the Roos, which I'll be excited to see.
Yeah, and their pain is our fantasy game, because we've spoken about defenders are gold when a team's getting slaughtered. So that's why Zeeble and Hall do so well. So maybe we will see them drop off if North come back up the mountain, but keen to get into that. I'm maybe jumping ahead. So Kerm, I'll throw to you. 2022, how do you see the North list playing into your fantasy plans?
I really like Jai Simkin, and I'm going to try and figure out a way to fit him into my best 22. I think he's going to take another step, because he has taken a step from the season before. Simkin really established himself as their go-to midfielder when Zeeble exited. Ben Cunnington was out, obviously. Jed Anderson's always been in and out as well. But Simkin's been their best ball getter. Not sure how long that'll be the case for, with Horn Francis coming into the team, but for now, Simkin will be in my best 22. Knocking on the door, I've got Aaron Hall. He actually has picked up an injury, so he's in doubt for round 1, hence why he's knocking on the door. Otherwise, he would be in my best 22. But Aaron Hall, he's so damaging. I'm still baffled by those 20-plus kicks a game. He's probably the best defending asset in fantasy football right now. The other one is Taryn Thomas, a young guy. I'll speak about him more later on, and I'll be avoiding Luke McDonald, who was fantasy relevant once upon a time for those who've been playing fantasy for a little while. But with Aaron Hall and Jack Zeeble coming down back, Luke McDonald's been seeing less and less of the footy. So yeah, Luke McDonald will not be making my best 22 or my squad, to be fact.
There we go.
Yeah, wow.
Wow. Quite a list there, mate. My best 22, let me get straight into it. Aaron Hall, the best scoring defender from last year. As we mentioned, you know, we're not going to see too much of a trend change for North heading into this upcoming season, so I expect his fantasy production to be quite similar from the year prior. Knocking on my door, Jai Simkin. Kerm, I know you're big on him. I'm also quite big on him as well. And Jaden Stevenson as well. He wasn't able to play a whole lot of last year because of an injury that he picked up in his own backyard, unfortunately. Riding a dirt bike, fell off. Yeah, but irrespective of that and the off-field issues, if you even want to call that an issue, that just might have been a lack of judgment one time. He is a star.
What do they say? You can take the boy out of Collingwood, but
you can't take Collingwood out of the boy.
Exactly right. But whatever you think about Stevenson, he is a great football player. He is a fantasy stud. He gets involved into the game through high disposals, marks, just the whole shebang, if you ask me. So he's knocking on my door, and then avoiding is Todd Goldstein, the ruckman for the team. They're not going to be winning too many centre clearances this year, so his numbers aren't going to be too great. He did score quite well for the Roos last year, but then you also have to consider age and how long he's been at the team. He's not a player that I'm going to want to pick up, so I'll be avoiding him for the next season.
Sorry, I'm off in my own little bit world laughing. You're talking about Stevenson, and somehow I was drawn back to when Didak and Shaw were done for drink driving. And remember the press conference?
Oh
them
my
sitting
God.
there, so smug, and the string of stuff that happens with Collingwood. But I'm glad you had Goldie there, because I have Goldie. We were talking before about a player that we love. He's in my avoiding. You said before, once a fantasy relevant player, Kerm, when you were talking about McDonald. So yeah, Goldstein was the same when I was playing fantasy 5 years ago. He was the number one ruckman, and there was no brainer. I have gone Hall. I'm not going to go into why, because you guys obviously have him as well, but you've left out Zeeble. Why do you guys not have Zeeble?
I was going to mention this. So you've done the defending stack.
Yeah.
Which I love this strategy. And if there is a backline right now to stack two players in, it's definitely the Kangaroos. You want those two defenders in your team if you can pick them up, because one might have an outstanding game, one might have an average, but that's going to equate to 2 great games from your defenders. So your floor is really, really high when you're looking at fantasy production per week by stacking those 2 players. So although I didn't do it, I'm going to commend you for doing it. I think that's a great decision.
Yeah, I just think we're going to see a small regression from Jack Siebel. And for me, it's just like how many fantasy relevant players can a North Melbourne team hold right now? And I think we're going to see jumps from people like Taryn Thomas and Jason Horne-Francis, Jai Simkin, these players. So for me, it's just like Jack Siebel, he's been a club legend, to be fair. It's not hard to be a club legend for North Melbourne. All you got to do is put a jumper on. But so Jack Siebel, I think we're going to see a small regression. Nothing too major. He's still going to be fantasy relevant, but yeah.
Fair enough. And the only other thing I've got there, I got Stevenson. So when he played, he's a very good footy player. It's just, And the thing I have here that kind of took me surprise was he's only going to be turning 23 this year. He's still super young, and he's had those off-field stuff, but a bit of maturity, and could go a long way. He could be a really gun player in that forward line for anyone going forward. But let's have a look now as we'll move into how things are going to look from a dynasty perspective. So join in the chorus. Alrighty guys, looking ahead to the dynasty potential of some of these players in the Kangaroos. Of course, the reason we are doing this is because Game Day Squad is a dynasty fantasy platform, meaning if you have a player, you own the player card, that player card carries on from year after year. So it's not just hey, I go out and get a Taryn Thomas or a Zeeble or whoever it might be, and then you've only got them for that season. If you've gone out and got them in a pack, or you've purchased them off the transfer market, you've got that card until forever. Even if they retire, you can still hold on to them. You never know, they might come back and play in the later day, or we've got some other really cool uses for retired players going forward. But future stars, so how we do this, we want this to be a player you'd put in your team and you wouldn't think twice about for the next 5 years. So, Kerm, it would have been tough a couple of years ago to find someone from the Kangaroos, but a little bit easier now. Who'd you go with?
Yeah, you are right. And I've chosen Taryn Thomas, who's 21 years old, coming into his 4th season already. And it's just the massive jump he had last year that is really interesting me. So in 2020, he only averaged 7.8 disposals, where in 2021, he averaged 18 disposals. And he's been able to impact the scoreboard. He can float from the midfield and then move up forward. Reminds me of like a Daniel Wells, who was another Kangaroos legend, just so silky and smooth with the footy and great user by foot. So Taryn Thomas, I know they like the ball in his hands, and I think he's going to be one to watch for the future.
Yeah, great pick there. And I actually touched on him a little bit later on as well. I was really looking at him and thought about putting him in this section, but Jaden Stevenson's going to be my dynasty player that I'm looking at, and it's because he's already proven. And we just mentioned he's 23 years old. He's had some time off with an injury. I'm sure he's going to be fine and bounce back off that. He's very young. His body can still heal. We see when he can play that he can be one of the better fantasy players in the whole league. And he's got the opportunity there. There's no one really taking the ball away from him. There's not too many mouths to feed at the Kangaroos. So when he comes back into the lineup, he's going to be a player that's going to demand a lot of ball and is going to use it very well. So I want that on my team for the next couple of years, especially at 23. I'll say it again, 23 years old and he's already this proven. That's a dynasty player that is set and forget in my eyes, and that's why I gave him the nod.
Yeah, my eye gets drawn to that on the screen where it says he's 6th, meaning out of all the forwards in the competition, he was the 6th highest average last season, which, when you're thinking about, we just spoke about how Zeeble and Hall might regress because the North are going forwards. It's a confusing way to think about it. But with North getting better, you're going to imagine a lot more ball and a lot more goals, which are obviously really important, off Jaden Stevenson's boot. So that's a great pick. I've gone for a player that, no surprise, who hasn't had a kick in the game of AFL yet, but that's Jason Horne-Francis. Number 1 draft pick. Look at him there. He looks like he's ready to put this club on his back. He's a gun. He is a gun. Explosive mid.
He is.
When I was looking and doing my research on this guy, and you have a look back through his juniors, the whole way through, from when he was under 12s all the way to when he was drafted, he was always the number 1 ranked player. And I think about that from a pressure point of view, whereas when he was 12 years old, he was like, hey, you're the best player of your age. And he's had to live with that when he was 13, 14, 15. Doesn't phase him. Super explosive. Looks like he's being pushed, and there's talk about Willie or won't he start round 1, which I think is all a joke. He'll be there. There's no way they're not going to start him in round 1.
100%.
And I think he's
already their best player.
What I love, I got a stat for you here. So big stage player, and when he was playing in the prelim in the under-18s comp, 24 touches, 18 of which were contested, kicked 3 goals and 11 clearances. Like, what else do you want from your state captain?
That's huge numbers.
Quietly.
Yeah, crazy. So this guy's one of the more future star locks. I know everyone we put in here is a lock, but I reckon, throw him in there and just forget about him. The only asterisk I have on it is the jersey he's wearing, and I just hope that the club don't ruin him. Yes, that's a shot at you guys. Let's have a look at some upside potential players. So these aren't your Horn Francis who we think are going to be a lock, but who do we have as someone that, bit of variance? Don't all jump
So
in at
I've
once.
gone with the two hyphenated boys. I've gone with Luke Davies-Unier, LDU. A little bit easier on the tongue, LDU. And I've gone Horn Francis as well, the 2 hyphenated guys who are going to be dominating the midfield there with Jai Simkin. I think that midfield alone is really exciting to me. I can't wait to watch this young midfield really attack the game by the horns, and they should be hungry because they have played some good footy in the past, and once they get that continuity together, I'm sure they're going to be able to string some wins together.
And I've gone here with Kerms knocking on the door for his squad here in Thomas, pick 8th in the draft. And it's not quite the pick 7, which is the magic number, as Callum was mentioning before in another episode. But he's in his 3rd season already, and he's had the luxury of being able to learn the game from such a young age. And as Kern mentioned before, with his kicking and disposal numbers getting that increase, the fantasy production had quite the same increase as well. He went from the 40s the year prior into the 90s last year, which is a huge leap in fantasy production from such a young player. I want to see where that ceiling is because I don't think we know where it is yet. And this year will be a huge year for him in telling how good of a footballer he will be moving forward.
Yeah, love that. And on that, we've had obviously weeks since our last episode to have a look at it. So some former number 7 players of note. Paddy Ryder, Joel Selwood, Rich, Ollie Wines, Bailey Smith, and I don't have the more recent ones. So I don't know why number 7 was sticking in my head. Maybe it was because of Ollie Wines. I think he's just sort of made number 7 picks beautiful for me, but that's why it stuck out. I went with Simkin. Anyone that wins a best and fairest when they're under the age of 24 is wild. He did that. He had a killer year. I still think he can go to the next level. Horn Francis and him beside could be an elite duo. We were talking about stacking there before. It's like out with the defenders, in with the midfield forwards. So, yeah, that's who I've got. Let's finally have a look at the dynasty potential of the Roos. Now, I've been a little bit harsh here. And when I did this up, we did our notes. We said we had a bit of a hiatus and then we had a bit of COVID and things like that. So looking at it now, looking how the preseason sort of going, how the in-house testing, I think putting them in tier 4 was a little bit harsh. But again, with the way the North are, I don't feel confident saying that they will be a top 4 contender in the next few years. So potentially that's why I leaned more sort of that tier 4. What do you guys feel?
I agree. I can't see him turning the ship around that quick. And the players that we've mentioned that are so exciting, LDU, Horn Francis, Taryn Thomas, Cameron Zerha, these young guys, they're going to need time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a season. So it's going to need time. And with that criteria we have, that top 4 contender, I just can't see it in the next few years. So I think we're right in tier 4.
And I agree with Kerm there in terms of it is going to take some time. You can't expect all these people to come in. The cultures, they're trying to shift that culture from where they are currently to a winning culture and, making the finals and going into September footy. That doesn't happen overnight. That doesn't happen over an off-season. It might take a couple of years, but I think tier 4 for now is quite reasonable and fair considering how they have been performing over the past year or two. But there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. We're definitely going through the worst of it right now in the thick of it. And I can see this being changed around, in a couple of years' time, maybe just outside of that sort of range that we're looking at with these tiers here.
Yeah, and I think what I had, just going back over my notes, was they've got some awesome young players. Obviously, we just spoke about Horn Francis and those guys, but it's the key positions that I just don't see. Like, where's the full forward, centre half forward, full back, ruck?
100%.
Like those positions that are obviously quite crucial. Like, they got the players around them. They might be the better players, but I still want to see like who's going to be a lockdown defender, who's going to kick your 60, 70 goals as your big. So, yeah, who knows? Another good draft pick, they might be able to do that. Robbie Tarrant.
Yeah, they lost Robbie Tarrant to Richmond, so
Oh, they lost him to Richmond. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a massive loss.
I'm getting Tarrant mixed up with old mate from before. But anyway, we'll let my confusion go because Tom, I believe before we head off, we're going to talk. You're going to say a few things to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Guys, these videos are now banging out. We've got such good content on the way. The fantasy season is rapidly approaching, and we're helping you do some research and find some players that you're going to want to slot into your lineup. So leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, push those post notifications on so you can find out when we're uploading so you can be first in, best dressed, and prepare before everyone else. Guys, all of our socials for everything that we're doing here at Game Day Squad will be in the description. But other than that, until next time and next video, we'll see you then.